Hi there, this is John Drew and Jole Gabrielle from Elevated Planet. And today we're going to discuss the third chakra. And for that, I'm going to turn to my business partner, Jole Gabrielle, to tell us a little bit about the third chakra. Hi there, Jole.
Hi, John. Thank you so much again for allowing me this honor of really explaining and going into the chakras and what they are in control of, or what can help guide us through our lives. You know, this soul architecture, once you tap into it, it's really amazing what it can help you do. And this happens to be the chakra that is known for the flow. So the flow of our energy, the flow of other people's energy. I mean, they all do that. But this one is where our confidence, our self-esteem, our power, our freedom, and that's our selfhood comes from. And usually we reach this when we're around 14 to 21, we get into development of this chakra. And it's directly below the sternum and over the stomach. And it's known for your personal power, your freedom of choice, your sovereignty. So in our society, this one happens to be quite shut down in many of us, because if we're like lemmings and we wake up and we're going into that cubicle and every day is the same thing over and over and over again without much spontaneity, without much movement in right or to the left or, up, down, whatever. This is what kind of begins to make this contract and contract and contract, because now you really don't know who you are. You're just fulfilling what you believe to be right in order to get your paycheck, or pretty much what other people are asking you to do. So it's really important that we sit in this energy so that we can develop a really strong sense of self and a healthy ego. A lot of people believe that, get rid of the ego. But it's not necessary. We want our ego to default to the messages from the higher self, because it can really be there to protect us and allow for us to embody who we are, who we think we are, what we want to be. It really brings us to, along with the heart, our core. And it is the architect of our identity, this part of our body. So some of the ways in which to get this flowing, if you happen to be contracted, is to exercise. Exercise is always a great way to open up your chakras. And sometimes, when you're exercising, you can get great ideas coming in. You're more apt to relax and allow for the spirit to guide you, because those endorphins are moving and there's more of an alignment with what we want, what we desire, because we're really working our body in that way. Prayer always works. There's just whatever it looks like. It doesn't necessarily mean getting on your knees and putting your hands together. Sometimes it can be a creative visualization. Prayer can also mean seeing yourself where you want to be and asking for the universe to help you move there. So that's also a really important aspect of the third, is to engage it by visualizing, telling it where you want it to go by vision, allowing for your subconscious mind to do some of the work so that your conscious mind can help the solar plexus chakra in moving you towards your goals. Okay, so that's really important. The element that represents this chakra is fire. You were going to say something?
I was just going to say, it's an interesting point you make there about a lot of people who just end up having a very routine existence because you're fitting in with the programming of life. Got yourself the job. You're getting the same train every day or the same bus every day. You're parking in the same bay, whatever. There is a big risk in that you're kind of leaving behind your dreams. And that's what I kind of get about the third chakra. This is about manifesting your visions and your dreams. And I'd see that this would be a big risk. Well,
because what it does, if your power, your personal power, to something and someone else. And so it's very difficult for it to begin to develop when it's under the oppression or the guise of something else. And then you begin to sort of entangle, and it becomes difficult to know where you end and begin and another person ends and begins. So resistance, confrontation, really pushing the bar forward and trying to catch up with it really help to this chakra to spin. Challenges, and we all sort of shy away from those, challenges and confrontation, but healthy boundaries are very important for us to be able to maneuver through life and to really plant our flag and know who we are. So this is the one that really creates a strong warrior. And when you talk about their own personal power, I mean, what does that look like, right? Power isn't necessarily force. Hawkins, his book, Power versus Force, he even has like a pyramid of energies and behaviors that help you reach the top of the pyramid. And most believe that love is at the top of the pyramid. It is not. It is joy. So how do you your joy if you don't have any personal power, if you don't know who you are, if you have no personality or ego sort of helping you to maneuver through this? Oftentimes, like I said, we don't, where am I? Or am I hearing my mom? Am I hearing my dad? Am I hearing my boss? So we get very clear. And so working in the solar plexus chakra allows us to get very clear as to who we are.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you say about the ego as well, because that was my thought, is that ego is always thought of as something that's bad, something that gets in the way of you actually touching base with your higher self. But I guess, that's the point, is that ego is there for a reason. It's there because it does help, that as long as it doesn't take over.
That is correct. And this chakra, when you are deficient, you're serving. And I don't mean as in being of service to yourself and others. I mean, being like a servant, a slave, a person who is really moved by what's going on outside of them instead of what's going on inside. And so this is the person that is going to be two-faced, phony, say one thing, do another, always seeking confirmation and approval from other people. And then there is the one that is proper, that has it kind of balanced. And this is a positive quality. And this is where we are a warrior. This is where we look for solutions. We fight our own battles. We ask for support in a way that is mature and honorable, and we sit in our integrity. Now, when it's excessive, we become sort of like narcissistic. We want what we want. We get very selfish. There's not enough room for other people. And we're also manipulating and trying to control. So we want to watch that, when we're in our solar plexus chakra. We want to really have a balance of, hey, this is my space. I respect you. You respect me. And if we can collaborate and come together in equal, then that's fabulous. But there isn't a person that should be above me or below me. We should kind of be, I'm not talking about a hierarchical system at a job. I mean, in life and spiritually and in the flow. Also, when there's an issue with this chakra, we're experiencing problems in this area of our body, which then goes into IBS, indigestion, ulcers, liver's affected, maybe hepatitis, gallstones, and inflammation, it just goes throughout the body. Also, we want to make sure we have enough sweetness in our life, because if not, then we're reaching for those things. And this is an issue we want to work within the solar plexus chakra, like sugar addicts. You really want to work with your personal power, softening, being gentle, being kind to yourself, so that you are not in your addiction of reaching for that sugar, which then, the body just goes haywire. And another important part that I think we need to know about the solar plexus chakra, or we benefit by knowing, is that it's not going to be always sunshine and flowers. It's important that we kind of have some resistance. We kind of have some opposition here, and we seek out some of these challenges, because when we rub up against that internally, it really causes us to develop. So we don't want to always seek out the easy way out, the shortcut. The solar plexus is really not about the shortcut. It's about taking into consideration what it is that you need to have more of or accomplish, like in your personality. Like for me, I'm very sensitive. So I don't like confrontation, but every once in a while, it's important for me to establish a boundary. Now, sometimes some things are more important than others, right? Like people are being petty and they're gossiping about me. Do I really need to address that, especially if it's not affecting my life? Because at the end of the day, if people are gossiping and talking smack about you, they're actually giving you their power if you do not react. Now, if somebody is getting in the way of your forward progress, they're affecting you to where you are, your family or your job, or things are starting to get out of hand. It's important that you set a boundary right then and there with that person or that situation, right? So it's really important for us to understand ourselves so we can understand what it is that we need to avoid, if as far as confrontation and boundary setting, and the things we really need to pay attention to. And this is also a dual chakra, which is important. So it's sort of like we have the outside and then we have the inside, and we've kind of got to integrate that, meaning we do have a culture, we do have a society, we do have rules and laws, right? And then we want to integrate that with what it is that we want in our lives. So it's important that we do take both of those into consideration. But at the end of the day, err on the side of supporting you and your spiritual and emotional development, and not really caring about what other people think about you, especially if it's within the confines of decency.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that is one of the things that I've learned. I'm sufficiently confident in who I am and what I'm doing to think, okay, well, I can just be who I want to be. I suppose in earlier years, I would have been way more concerned about how people felt about me. But, maybe it's a point of maturity.
Oh, I think it's more programming and conditioning, because if you think about your children, they could give a care about what anybody thinks about what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's only when you start yelling and screaming and no and hitting, then all of a sudden, now they're starting to care, which is good, right? Because we live amongst other people. However, we can go overboard, and now this child is more concerned about not getting in trouble. So they're stifling part of them. And then what happens? We push it down, we stifle. And then we get to the teenage years, and there's this big explosion. There's this rebellious spirit. There's this, I don't want to fit in. We're dealing with excessive solar plexus chakra. So as parents, it's wise for us to give our kids enough space for them to make mistakes and still be loved and still be honored, and for us to feed their confidence. That's very important, because when they get to a certain age, you want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and be comfortable in their own skin. And this is very much so the chakra that is going to determine that. Yeah. See these 3: root, Goldilocks, the Savastana, and the Manipura. These 3 are your channels of manifestation. And you can, they're closest to your legs, right? So that means they move your life forward. And these happen to be where most of us are shut down. We get the ideas, we know what to do, we can speak all about it, we can show love. But then when it comes to execution, we're kind of cut off from ourselves. And why is that? Because we're too busy caring about what other people are going to think about us. Is this going to work? Who's going to, we're all the variables that are going on outside of us. So it's important that we build our character, right? By learning how to listen, not only to our bodies, our hearts, and our intuition, but, a little bit of those outside of us, but mostly here within this.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you say. It's like with my daughter, for instance, when she was growing up, I used to enjoy listening to what she had to tell me. And I always felt that listening was the most important thing I could do. And it's not always easy to do, because I think as a parent, you're often looking to explain to the youngster how it should be.
Right.
But it's not always the best way to kind of approach things. But anyway, apart from the fact I'm still waiting for my teenage years to come out, it is fantastic. Sorry?
I said you and I, late bloomers. I am absolutely a late bloomer, and I know what you mean. That's because maybe we were never allowed to meet the world on our own terms, right? And that's so important. And when you're listening to people, you're allowing for them to kind of their own terms to bubble up, or their own terms. When you're listening to your child, you give them permission to do that. And that's so important because we learn from trial and error, don't we? I mean, we learn from mistakes. And if we're not allowed to make those mistakes, I'm not talking about big ones. I'm talking about the ones that are within the law. We are now, we know where the bar is for us. Now we know our boundaries get formulated. And this is really what's important in this. One of the important things about the solar plexus chakra.
I was going to say, I mean, one of my favorite quotes is like, experience is the quality that you gain, usually immediately following the moment you most needed it. And that's kind of like true very, in life, right? We learn through experience time and again. But
it's like a hot stove, right? You keep telling the child, don't touch the stove, it's hot. Don't touch the stove, it's hot. But it really doesn't understand that until it touches the stove and gets burned. And that's, maybe you only need to do that once. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to start listening to other people. But that kind of needs to occur at some point in order for us to learn how to follow directions. And then once we follow directions and get mastery over the rules, then we can start to break them, right? So the solar plexus helps you on that journey, knowing when and where the boundaries lie, when to go, when to stop. And it really helps us to develop our own personal, I guess, language and communication with the world.
Right.
This chakra also is our ability to influence others, really influencing others in a way that's positive to help us, especially if we're coming from a place of integrity. One of the ways that we know that we're really developing in the right direction in our solar plexus and with our soul architecture, right, is when we have the freedom of choice and when we know what we want clearly and we are finishing tasks, we're completing actions, and when the chips are down, we're loyal. This is really when this when this chakra starts to kick in and it starts to really, spin, and it also helps us to build our character.
Right. So when it comes to meditating, is there any specific focus point?
One of the things we'd love to do or we benefit is by integrating the ego and the higher self and having the ego default to messages from the higher self. But any type of time we're having issues with self-discipline, motivation, being self-directed, and also when this one is deficient or it's out of alignment, we're feeling a lot of shame. So we want to work around the ego, letting go of shame, letting go of the past experiences, learning to forgive ourselves and sit in our own personal power, have the confidence to express ourselves in a way that honors ourselves and others. And really developing that selfhood and that innate sense of self-worth, letting go of shame and bringing in the value for self, I would say is very important.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. I appreciate the overview of the third chakra. Is there anything further you feel that we should be adding to this?
The only thing is careful with allowing people to dump on us, right? Because this one has a tendency to get heavy. And when it gets heavy and we're playing the victim or we're letting other people play the victim in our lives, it gets very difficult to move. I know from personal experience. And people want to say, oh, you're lazy, or oh, you're stupid. They want to put all these labels on people who are challenged with the solar plexus chakra, when in all actuality, there's trauma here. There's being shamed, there's trauma from being abandoned. That's the first chakra. But here is like, it can all come together, like fear, the guilt, the shame, the worry. It gets out of hand. And then that solar plexus chakra is like, you know what, I'm out, gone to lunch. So it's something we really need in our lives to engage for us in order for us to move our lives forward. It's just so important. All of them are.
So yeah, no, I get that. And it's definitely a good thing to be able to take a step back and go through a guided meditation because it just enables us to create that visualization, if you like, that helps us to get to where we need to be, to get the balance right. All right, Jole. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate your words of wisdom, as always. Thank you all for listening in, and we will be back to you again sometime very soon with the meditation on the third chakra. And we look forward to engaging with you there. Take care. Thank you.